Welcome to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack on Foxsoul. And the business of being Black in this country today has always come down with the shared experience of dealing with systematic inequalities and implicit biases. But history has shown us that light-skinned Black people were treated better and given more privilege than those with darker skin. But is that still the case today? Well, we are about to find out. We're talking about if light skin privilege still exists in the Black community and our society. Let's get down to business. The business of being Black today is light skin versus dark skin. Please welcome music artist and video producer Salorm Kaplani. Hi, Salorm.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Digital storyteller and personality, Neoma Okori. Hi, Neoma.
Hey.
The founder of Colorism Healing, Dr. Sarah Webb is with us. Hi, Dr. Webb.
Hey, Tammy.
Celebrity chef Cordell Robinson. How does a chef end up on this show, Cordell?
Hello. How are you?
And actor and comedian Gary G. Thang Johnson. My man, what's going on, G. Thang?
Salam alaikum, black to the peace. Okay, I just messed that up. Yeah.
Listen, we always start the show with one question, and that is, why should Black people care? This is the business of being Black. So why should Black people care about colorism in the Black community? Dr. Webb.
We have to care about colorism in the Black community because, as our ancestor Alice Walker said, it holds us back as a people, just like racism, sexism, classism. We cannot progress if we do not address this interior problem that we have.
Chef, what do you say? Why should Black people care?
I think they should care because, they have to look at the roots of it. So the roots of it is not the colorism itself. The roots of it is systematic racism, and then it goes into colorism. So, if you think about it that way, it's like, let's try to get rid of colorism so that then we can start to get rid of systematic racism, because that's not going to happen until we get rid of colorism first.
Neoma, why? Why should I care?
Because I think that if we continue to forget about it, then, well, I don't even think anyone's forgetting about it, number one. But if we act like it doesn't exist, then we can't move forward as a people. And I just think it's really important to address that in the community and not sort of turn a blind eye when it either benefits you or when it benefits you, I'd say.
G-Thang, why should I care if you're dark skinned and I'm light skinned? Why should Black people care if this silly racism within ourselves even exists? Why should I care?
You shouldn't care. Who cares? I know I'm dark skinned and I know what I stand for. I ain't got to prove a point to nobody. You understand me? If the check clear, I don't care what color it is.
As long as the money green?
Hey, bruh, give it to me. You understand me?
Don't you have shirts that says that like dark skin shirts? What are your shirts?
My shirt say dark skin for life because I can't get no other color. Dark skin for life is actually the name of my new company too. Dark skin for life. You can't get no other color. You know what I mean? It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? So this how I came out my mama. You understand me? I came out of just this dark.
Why should Black people care?
We should care because colorism is rooted in white supremacy. And if we continue this is something that's going to hold us back. It's held us back in the past and it's going to continue to hold us back in the future. And I mean, I think that says it all. It's such a big factor of white supremacy.
So is having light skin an advantage in the Black community today? Do we agree or disagree with this? Is having light skin an advantage today, G-Thang?
I don't think so. Everything gonna be no to me. You hear me? I don't think that light-skinned people have no kind of advantage. Get pulled over, you'll see what kind of advantage you have. Ooh. You don't have any advantage on being light-skinned. The reason why I feel that way, because it's kind of get blown out of proportion. I just think that we Black at the end of the day. Me personally. Because I think I'm the darkest person on the panel right now.
Yeah, you are that.
I didn't ask you to comment to give me the okay that I was the darkest skinned person on the panel. I just feel as a Black person, as a dark skinned person, I've been getting discriminated against, but I also got some light skinned friends who getting the same discrimination against them as well. So I just feel that we as Black people, with being 14% of the population anyways, we all the same.
Cordell, what do you feel? Is having light skin an advantage in America today?
I don't think it is an advantage. I go back to the stories that my mom used to tell me, because so my mom is light skinned and my aunts are all light skinned. And she was telling me stories of when they were younger, how they used to get in fights because they were light skinned, and it was colorism, within their own race. And so, light skinned people had to deal with certain things. And I think today, because of systematic racism has risen and come to the surface so much, and it's out there wide open all over social media, everywhere, that it's now, more so, Black and white. It's not, the colorism part that's long gone.
Yeah. Dr. Webb, your thoughts?
So I think it definitely exists still today, because one, what have we done to eradicate it, right? And so if we haven't really been putting in the effort to end it, why would we assume that it no longer exists? But also I have to talk about the research, and we know that just like there are studies that show inequalities between white people and Black people, or Asian people and Black people, there have been research studies for decades that have looked at the inequalities amongst Black people, and those inequalities are the same that we see across racial lines. So in education, one research study that I find particularly disturbing is that dark-skinned girls with very dark skin tones, were 3 times more likely to be suspended from school than their counterparts who had very light skin tones. And if we were to hear statistics like that about white kids, we'd be up in arms, like, oh no, how dare they be so racist? But when it happens amongst us, we kind of want to dismiss it and sweep it under the rug. But it goes across all sectors of society. When we look at hiring patterns, studies done in the 2000s, right? These are not like from the 1950s, but like within my lifetime, studies showing that for people making hiring decisions, they looked more at skin tone than education levels and experience levels, right? And so a lot of times it's unconscious. People aren't necessarily walking around saying, oh, I'm intentionally favoring lighter skinned people. But, as Salorm said earlier, in a society that thinks white is better, it's also going to treat anybody who looks a little bit more closer to white as better as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, Neoma, Dr. Webb says it still exists. Light-skinned people still have an advantage over dark-skinned people, and that's statistically true. But haven't we as a people begin to love our skin color, begin to love our hair texture? Isn't there more that's happening today that says Black people love everything about being Black? Or is there still an advantage here?
I definitely agree. So I think that right now, because I'm from like the social media generation, right? So if you look at like TikTok, Instagram, all these social media platforms, a lot of times dark-skinned women are being praised, right? You have like pages like dark-skinned women and, different types of pages that celebrate melanin. I think that the issue with that sometimes, and from what I've heard from my friends, is that a lot of times people are more drawn to a dark-skinned woman when she's oiled up, or when she has less clothes on, or when she looks like a sexy chocolate, and they're just sort of being, yeah. But Gary, I wanted to touch on your point now, Gary, because you said that you feel as if we're all Black, so at the end of the day, we're all being treated the same. So I think maybe in the case of, being pulled over by the cops, yes, but when you look at like nightclub life, or when you look at social settings, or when you look at the music industry, which I think Laura can even speak to as well, you're still having those situations where you see dark-skinned women are being turned away at the door, or they're getting in last, or they're only getting in because their light-skinned friend is with them, or guys are only approaching them because there's a light-skinned woman in the group, and they're sort of like having a better advantage when it comes to getting in places and being adored or admired, or whatever the case is. So
what I hear is light-skinned women get into the club easier.
That's one of the things, but that's a whole social setting thing, right? Like if we look at that's just as important, because it really shows. So I think
is it the light-skinned women getting in the clubs easier, or is it the exotic woman? Because I've been in that club.
That's a good point too.
I've been in that club life. I know what women is getting into them clubs. I've been one of the cats that allowed the people to get in the club, because I kind of got a little name. But the difference is I didn't see all sectors of it. It ain't so much as the light skin, it's the exotic color that don't even quote unquote call themselves black. You know, that's a whole nother.
Unless it's
That
convenient.
Neoma talks about the hip hop industry and the culture of social media, because when you look at it, most hip hop artists who come from disadvantaged homes, who are darker skinned, do choose the lighter skinned women. Storm, let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like, I feel like I see examples of what Neoma was talking about a lot. I think there's such a resurgence of people being like, oh, I'm dark skinned, I'm proud, because women like me are speaking up on social media about their experiences, trying to protect younger girls from going through what they went through. And so we're definitely seeing a lot more support of darker skinned women, but that doesn't mean that doesn't happen. To be honest, I feel like when I see a rapper or someone, for example, talking about their preferences in the media of like what kind of women they like and what kind of women they don't like, there's so many that are always like, I don't like dark skinned women. You don't hear them saying that about any other race other than specifically dark skinned women. So it's not that we are separating ourselves from Black people in total. We are separated, like we are already being separated. We're already being othered. And so I feel like this is still a thing, not only in the Black community, but in so many communities within the Asian community.
Why is it necessary to make an announcement that you don't date dark-skinned women?
Exactly.
It does prove to be problematic. Let's take a quick break and come right back on Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. Welcome back to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack, and the business of being Black today is light skin versus dark skin. Does that even exist anymore in America and within the Black community? Please welcome music artist and video producer Salorum Kaplani, digital storyteller and personality Neoma Okori, the founder of Colorism Healing, Dr. Sarah Webb, celebrity chef Cordell Robinson, and actor and comedian Gary G. Thang Johnson. So does this still exist is the question. And it sounds like some of you say it does. Some of you say, nah, not so much. But have you ever been personally judged by the color of your skin, Neoma?
So I think this conversation may take a little bit of an interesting turn. Just because as a light-skinned woman growing up in school, I was actually like really light. So now I've kind of gotten a little bit of a tan, but like, for example, your legs don't tan as dark as maybe your face would because it's more exposed to the sun. So I actually had kids like kind of call me Michael Jackson and say, you're really light skinned, and you're really light, you're pale, and I think that used to definitely affect me. It definitely used to hurt my feelings because I'm like, oh my God. It got to a point where I got my hands on some tanning lotion and I was trying to like make myself a little bit darker. But I say this definitely to say that it does not in any way even compare to what my darker skinned sisters go through. But that just has been my personal experience. And then obviously as I've gotten older, I've had another interesting experience where people are sort of asking me, am I bleaching my skin? What lotion am I using? Or I really love your complexion. I love your color. So it's been a mix of the two.
Interesting. Well, that am I bleaching my skin or are you bleaching your skin goes right along in with Michael Jackson because people thought he was bleaching his skin. Of course, Sammy Sosa, it was rumored that Sammy Sosa, baseball player Sammy Sosa, had been bleaching his skin. And then that led to a whole kind of Dominican Republic type of conversation where they say it's kind of normal to bleach your skin. So that's interesting. Cordell, what about you? Your skin tone, ever been discriminated or felt judged by the color of your skin?
As an adult, no. As a kid, yes. So as a kid, mainly from siblings and their friends, because I was the darkest kid out of all of them. So they used to always, pick fun and say different things. But as adults now today, talking with my siblings and things is very interesting because my lighter skinned siblings only date very dark people, and everyone that's dark date very light people in my family, for example. And I think that's across the board when, kind of going back when we talk about some people say they only date light skin or they only date something. I think that maybe they shouldn't announce it that way because it's triggering, but there's people have preferences. So, there's people that prefer light skin or prefer dark skin only. That's just how it is. Everybody's going to have, their taste.
So Dr. Webb?
Have I personally experienced or been judged? Yes, definitely throughout my entire life. And I have a sister who's several shades lighter than me. She's my best friend. Shout out to Jandale Crushfield. But that comparison was made very obvious to me throughout my entire life. But even as an adult, I've noticed the way people stereotype me, and they seem to want to police me a little bit more, right? So people assume that I'm going to be the troublemaker at like a baby shower or something. And if you know me, I'm the least likely to cause drama, right? But there are a lot of associations.
Dr. Webb, hold on. Make that clear. Like, why do people assume you're going to be the one to start trouble at a baby shower? That confuses me.
So it's this perception or the stereotype about dark-skinned women being more ghetto or being more aggressive or being more hood or ratchet or just not being as sophisticated or cultured or, articulate, all these things. And so it goes into, like people's so-called preferences, like the reasons they say they don't date dark-skinned women, thinking about the infamous Kodak Black line, I think was like, oh, dark-skinned women are too ratchet, they're too gutter, they're too tough, right? And so these perceptions persist even amongst like other women, white women, Black women, women of other colors. There's this assumption that I'm gonna be the loud one, or that I must be like the ghetto person or the troublemaker. And so even as an adult, I still see the stereotypes being played out.
Meanwhile, Kodak Black is the one to speak while he's giving dark-skinned men a bad name by being as ratchet as he possibly can and as ghetto as he possibly can. And I think even done a little jail time. So Kodak Black might not be the one to speak on who's representing what type of African American. But I do hear you when you say, that that people kind of judge the color of your skin, and I guess basically compares it to, or it equals to, your character. And that happens a lot with men, G-Thing, because there's this big thing about light-skinned men, can't fight, but the dark-skinned men can. And then, this whole Wesley Snipes versus Christopher Williams kind of war that we've had with light-skin versus dark-skin. G-Thing, you ever been judged by your skin color?
Well, I was, like my man Cordell said, as a kid, women wouldn't date me because I was too dark, and then I got called a lot of names. I'm still to this day getting called a lot of names, but because I'm a comic, I can kill you back. But as a dark-skinned person, my confidence is on some other level type of stuff. I go back to that Morris Chestnut dark-skinned. I tell everybody right now, everybody that's talking about dark-skinned people, white people trying to get dark like me, light-skinned people, they want to get this tone. This tone is the tone, baby. Let me just break that down to you. I don't care what color you are, they trying to get back to this level of dark. Maybe not this level.
Do you think that Michael Jordan and Wesley Snipes made it cool to be dark-skinned as a man?
I think they started it, but I mean, now you can go with the people that we know from that's decent looking, that's good looking dark-skinned men like Morris Chestnut, like myself, and what
about Kodak Black? Like Kodak Black too?
He should still be in jail. If the con man didn't let him out, he should still be in jail. He has no voice in our community. It's a lot of rappers that don't have a voice in our community that we don't pay no attention to. We got one dude that wear boots in the summertime that we don't pay no attention to because he refused to even give a chance to date a dark-skinned woman.
Yeah.
Me, huh?
I was moving on to Salorm. Salorm, you ever been judged for your skin color?
So I think for me as well, I definitely got a lot of it when I was a kid, people excluding me because of my color and people saying, oh, you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl, which is not a compliment. But I think that as an adult, I realized that even though people weren't saying it as much, it was still like something that I could see reflected in hiring decisions. Like as an actress, and sometimes I do modeling, it can be distressing to see no representation as a dark-skinned person. It makes you wonder, well, what's the point? And also speaking with
where do you
preferences,
think where do you think dark-skinned women lack representation?
I think, well, I mean, I think that we're getting more, you know, and I think that's because a lot of us are in the positions of power as time goes on. But I think that, you know, when you see like leading ladies, like there's still a lack of representation, like there's still like less representation of dark-skinned women, I will say. I think in modeling, I see it a lot less. I think in the music industry, we still see women, especially Black women in general. But there's almost, I mean, I feel like a lot of Black female artists that I've spoken to, we feel like we're more pressured to stay in the lane of R&B.
I feel you on the music artist. I feel you on the music artist thing. I love V. Bozeman, just
right.
beautiful, beautiful woman with banging music. But on the movie side of it, I kind of like, it's just so many examples from Angela Bassett to Viola Davis to
Regina Hall.
Yeah, Regina Hall, and then
Regina King.
Lupita.
No, for sure.
It's so many in that respect. I think they're actually lacking light-skinned women represented in the movie. But I do feel you on when you talk about the music side. Let's take a quick break, because when we come back, Dr. Webb, I want to talk about the systemic consequences of colorism, because there is a lot of systemic consequences, and we want to get deep into that and talk about that when we return on Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack on Foxsoul. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack. Today, the business of being Black is light skin versus dark skin. Does that still exist in the Black community? A hypothetical question here. If you have two Black men who are the same size and height, both wearing a hoodie, and they're pulled over by the police, would they be treated differently because of their skin tone? G-Thing, I think you alluded to this earlier.
No, because the police officer, if he's white, he only see a Black dude. He don't care if you light skinned or dark skinned, and that's because I seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. Cordell, what do you think?
Same, I agree. I see it with my own eyes as well. It doesn't matter your skin tone. You're Black, that's it. You know.
Yeah. So, Lauren?
I mean, I agree. I think if you're Black, like you're going to be treated like you're Black to a police officer. But yeah.
That moves us into the systemic consequences of colorism. Dr. Webb, let's talk about that, from criminal justice to employment to educational status and health outcomes.
Yeah, so I hear what everybody's saying, their perspectives in terms of seeing things with their own eyes. But if I may use an analogy, there are white people who are also mistreated by the cops, right? But that doesn't mean white people aren't less likely to be mistreated by the cops. And so even if you see lighter skinned people having negative interactions with police officers or having negative experiences in the legal justice system or experiencing racism, that doesn't mean they still don't have some benefit within these systems. And so we look at, the research studies show that the disparities that we attribute to race are not spread equally across Black people. And so the lighter your skin tone, the less these inequalities impact you. And so wage gaps, for example, we think about wage gaps between white people and Black people. So for very light-skinned African Americans, there's virtually no wage gap between their income and white people's income. So when we talk about
facts, Dr. Webb?
So I'm saying that there are research studies. And so, other variables come into place. This research study was done in 2011, I think. And so there's enough evidence to suggest that there's differential outcomes consistently for lighter skinned people versus people with medium skin tones and for people with darker skin tones. And so these studies are not being run every day, right? So they are a snapshot in time. And so I offer them as evidence, but if you were to take the same sample today, I can't confirm or verify or say 100% that you get the same results. But, even looking at things like the educational system, where light-skinned people across different races, so African Americans as well as Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, where a lighter-skinned sibling earns as much as 1 to 2 years more of schooling, they're more likely to finish high school and then matriculate into a college campus, and then looking at things like lighter skinned women getting more lenient prison sentences than darker skinned women, right? And so there have been studies done for decades, and they continue to show this pattern. And so we definitely see a pattern in the larger society where lighter skinned people disproportionately have better outcomes than their darker skinned counterparts. And I know one of the other panelists mentioned the legacy of slavery, right? And so some of the historical research shows that because of the advantages historically, that those things accumulate, right? Just like they compound, almost like interest. And so if your parents, if your great grandparents were afforded education, then that puts you in a better position in today's society, right? And so darker skinned people who were not afforded those advantages, access to education, access to training and things like that, have a larger gap to close than some of our lighter skinned siblings who have the generational legacy of education and upward social mobility.
Author and clinical psychologist Dr. Joy Adagori said, as you move along the color spectrum, the darker you are, the less important, beautiful, viable, or all of those things that society has imposed upon you based on that notion of supremacy. When we go back and talk about slavery and white supremacy, do you agree with that statement, Cordell?
I agree a little bit, but not totally, because everyone's not looking at the full picture of it. If you go back to slavery and you had light skin in the house, dark skin outside, just because they were inside the house, they weren't treated better. They were raped, they were beaten, all kinds of things happened to them inside the house that on the outside people didn't see, right? So a lot of that happened, and that's a lot of trauma and generational trauma that comes up to today, right, that light-skinned people have. And so I think we should look at both ends of the spectrum. And also I think that psychologically we may still feel sometimes or think sometimes, oh, it's our skin tone, but is it really our skin tone, or is it circumstance, or is it that particular environment, for instance? You know, because we always try to loop everything into, well, what the loud person is saying instead of, okay, what it really is, what is the real experiences? Even like for like Dr. Webb, she's talking about education. I'm the darkest in my family, but I have the highest education. But my parents saw something in me, so it wasn't because I was darker or lighter. They saw something in me that kind of propelled me toward that. My lighter skinned siblings, they did not. It was just, you know, and that's just how it is. So it's all, I think, more so circumstances. If we look at it from that lens more so and get out of the mindset that those prejudices are out there within our community, that's the faster we get rid of it, instead of like always dwelling on it. We need to address it, definitely, not ignore it, but not like always conjure it up.
So I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Webb, go ahead.
I just wanted to push back a little bit, because that's the same argument that people make about racism, that if we just stop dwelling on racism, then the problem will disappear. And so I don't think that pointing to a systemic issue is causing that issue. And so I think even when we look at instances where a dark-skinned person has a better outcome than a lighter-skinned person, that's like saying there are homeless white people, right? There are white people who are unemployment. There are white people who are less educated than I am. That doesn't mean racism is not a problem in this country. And so the same with colorism, right? Even if you can point to examples where a darker skinned person might have exceeded expectations or exceeded their lighter skinned siblings, that doesn't discount the reality of colorism.
Interesting, because then it makes me wonder, then what is the solution? I don't know that there's a solution if it's not circumstantial. Do you believe it's circumstantial, Salorn?
I mean, I guess in that respect, like, I do feel like everyone has different circumstances, but similar to what Cordell said, like you said that there's people in the house and then there's people in the field in slavery, but they're still separated, you know, they're still held differently. And so I don't know, I think when it comes to healing though, the way that I've helped is just to affirm myself and to realize that the opinions of other people are the opinions of other people. You know, as we grow, we've got to support ourselves and we've got to support the people around us. And so I feel like addressing it also, but trying to move ourselves forward, that's how we heal from this.
Neoma, jump in here.
I agree with Laura. I think definitely addressing it and supporting, like even for me, right? I have a lot of dark skinned friends and I make sure that I'm supporting them. I make sure that I'm affirming them the same way I'd affirm myself. And I think it's about also changing your mentality. If everyone can adopt this mentality that black is black and light skin is light skin and dark skin is just as beautiful, it's just as fair. There shouldn't be any preconceived, ideas of who they are. Because I mean, even light skinned men sort of have they have prejudice against them as well in terms of like being weaker or being very pretty or being very feminine, so I just feel as if people need to stop judging people and accept them for who they are and celebrate every skin tone. So
or even being safe. But go ahead, G thing, my dark skinned friend.
Did you have to point that out? Thank you very much, my sister. I totally agree with my homegirl there when she was basically saying that light skinned cats go through a whole lot, and they do. Dark skinned cats, all my dark skinned friends are considered real tough thugs. You know what I mean? We kind of got this whole presence, like when we show up, we kind of like, yeah, what you gonna do about it? And light skinned cats was always was credited for having good hair. I didn't see a lot of them put curls in their head for they can compete to say they got good hair. I got good hair. My mama cute. So what I wanted to say as a dark-skinned brother when I was in college, I wanted to be a Q because all the dark-skinned cats was being Qs and all the light-skinned cats was being Kappas. So I wanted to be a Q because I wanted to do what the dark-skinned cats was doing. So this whole racism thing, I mean, Spike Lee did a whole movie about it.
Let's take a break on that note. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack, and the business of being black today is light skin versus dark skin. Does that still exist in the black community? Earlier in the show, we were talking about actresses who represent dark skinned women. Speaking of, in Kenya, where actress Lupita Nyong'o grew up, she was often told that she'd never be able to get married because she was too dark to find a husband. Salorum, you experienced this?
I haven't experienced someone specifically saying that to me, but I feel like throughout all my life, people have told me that opportunities are going to look different for me because of my skin tone. From my family members, because we're all dark, honestly. And so I feel like I've always been told to prepare for a world that does not favor my skin tone.
Yeah. And which is interesting in itself, because if people are telling you and you're growing up being told that opportunities will be limited or you'll have to work harder, doesn't that in itself put you in a different mind frame?
Well, I would say that, but I feel like I still encountered differences because I had that skin tone. Like I definitely went into the world naively, and my parents would say those things and I'd be like, that's how it used to be, and then I would experience those things on my own. And I mean, I wish that it was just in the past, but I feel like it's something that we all experience as we grow.
So is it something that people you should be warned about, or is it best left to experience it yourself? Which do you think is best?
I think it's okay to let kids know that happens, but I do think it's important to not tell people this is never going to happen to you because you're Black or because of your skin tone. I don't personally agree with that, because obviously you never know that could stick with someone. And so I think it's okay to address it, but don't grill it into them that it's such a big part of their identity, because for some people it's a different circumstance.
Neoma, by the same token, have you ever been told that you would lack opportunities based on your skin color?
Absolutely not. I'd be lying if I said that I experienced that. I have actually never been told that I would receive more opportunities because I'm light skinned, but because I have like friends of different hues, I've heard their experiences, and then I realized like, I don't feel as if I've ever not had an opportunity because of my skin tone, but I'm also thinking, have I been afforded opportunities because I'm light skinned, So there's always that thing there.
So when you brought up being in the club and more easier access to the club. Do you personally see that as a light-skinned woman with long hair, curly? That seems to be the stereotype that gets into the club, or that gets that is privileged. Mm-hmm. Are there some instances when you can say, yeah, that was a privilege I had that I don't think a darker skinned woman would have had.
I definitely think so. I haven't been in the face of that. So I haven't because I just honestly wouldn't feel comfortable going to that club if I saw that I was getting in and
Well, I guess
someone else
I'm not
wasn't.
speaking necessarily and specifically to the club. I mean, in any experience in your life. Have you had that experience where you were like, oh wow, I this was a privilege that I know my sister wouldn't have received, who's dark skinned?
I think so. And I think I'm able to definitely judge those experiences when, people are complimenting me a lot, saying, oh, I really like your complexion. I really like your skin tone. And I actually receive that a lot when I'm in Nigeria too, because we all know that bleaching is very prevalent in that community. So those are the experiences where I can where I've seen that, but it definitely always makes me feel very uncomfortable.
See, that's interesting because it's nice to know that it doesn't just affect dark-skinned women, but obviously it affects light-skinned women too, to be able to, for you to say you feel uncomfortable when it happens, it means that it's a shared kind of emotion that's happening, although different.
Yeah. Can I speak to that, Tammi? Yeah, Dr. Webb. So I like the way you phrase that, Tammi, how it's a shared kind of emotion. And I always say that whatever is impacting my sister or my brother or my, cousin down the street is impacting me. And so regardless of whether we see ourselves as being privileged by colorism or being on the, being targeted by colorism, it's definitely still a wound in the family. And so I think we all have a responsibility to solve it. But then also hearing Neoma talk, I often think about my privilege as being a thinner person. And I always say that I can't pretend like the society does not treat plus size women differently than it treats skinny women. And so as someone who's always been skinny, I've seen the way women with larger bodies have been teased, have been marginalized, have been, not allowed into spaces. And just the way, when I go to the doctor, the assumptions people make about me being thin, oh, you must be healthy, or you must eat right, or, or you look the part because of your body type. And so I think the same can be said for skin tone. And so I think we can have compassion and empathy for people, even if we don't have their same experience. So I appreciate Neoma's comments.
Yeah. Go ahead, G-Thing.
I never lost a role to a light-skinned person, not to be acting funny style or nothing. I never lost a role to a light-skinned person, and I'm always going in with people that's around my weight, my look, but light-skinned. I do find it when I'm on set after booking the job that they do, light-skinned people, lighting is totally different than mine. They do have to have a special light for me. So I always see the producer say, make sure you light G right. So it's always another type of lighting. That's the only difference that I've been seeing with light-skinned people in the industry, and that they've been having
you make a great point, G-Thing, because there has been this overwhelming conversation about how, because Black people were never considered, the skin tone of Black people have never been considered in television and movies. So we often don't look as well as we could, or as well as our counterparts, because the white directors, the white cinematographers behind the scenes don't account for the lighting difference that is required among darker skinned Black people, or Black people, period, and in general. Why is it an issue when a man says he wants to be with a yellow bone or a red bone woman, but it's not an issue when a woman says she wants a tall, dark, and handsome man?
Come on now, you better come through.
Or they'll talk to me.
Well, and I think that's the problem, is that, we're not, a lot of people don't look at it from both ends. They're only looking at it from the light-skinned privilege end. And it's like, there's issues on both sides. And if we realize the issues on both sides and come together, right, and then we can help solve this. And I believe that, like, society and different industries, not all, different industries are slowly solving those things by, as you see the different leading people in the world in different industries, modeling, politics, and all that, are more, you're seeing more prominent dark people coming to the forefront. So it's and it's all about preference. Everybody has their preference, and people should respect and understand that, because, if someone dates someone of another race, then someone has something to say. If someone only likes light skin, then someone has something to say. If someone dates dark skin, someone has something to say. So it's always going to be something.
Let's talk about preference here. If someone says, I only date light skinned women, or I only date dark skinned men, is that considered a preference or a prejudice? Because I also look at it as like, some women, I only date men with a job. I only date, I only date, women with an education. I mean, all of that to me seems like a preference. So it doesn't seem bad you like who you like. So what's the difference between the preference and the prejudice? Dr. Webb, I see you want to speak.
I definitely want to jump in on this one.
It's different.
Me too.
First, ever since you asked Salorm that one question, I've been wanting to share one of the research studies, the many that I could quote, where marriage rates amongst Black women show that for women under 30, lighter skinned women were 55% likely to have been married. For medium skin tone women, only 35% likely to be married. And for dark skinned women, only 23% likely to be married. And so
whoever said that to Lupita Nyong'o was correct? Is that what you're suggesting?
Correct, yes. Especially if you look at women of all races, that trend can definitely be mapped onto actual numbers. But in terms of preference, I've started saying there's nothing wrong with the word preference, but you can have a racist preference, and you can have a colorist preference. You can have a homophobic preference. You could have a sexist preference. You can have an ableist, ageist preference. Yeah. And so just because it is your preference doesn't mean it's not problematic.
Right now. Hold on. My preference is commercial right now. Let's come back. Welcome back to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack in the Business of Being Black today. Light skin versus dark skin. Is it still a problem in the Black community? Do light skinned people have a responsibility to call out colorism and be honest about the privileges they benefit from? Neoma, I have to ask here. Look, I'm going back to the club thing. If you and your girl and she's dark skinned going into the club and they're letting you in but won't let her in, you have a responsibility to call the club out?
Oh, absolutely. At that point, we're probably taking it to the streets of social media that very night, and we're not going to that club. So it's definitely something that I try to make sure of. And I think it's something that I'm sensitive towards too when it comes to my best friends. All my best friends are actually all dark skin. I actually don't have any close light skin friends, which is interesting. But I'm always making sure that like we're in this together. We both got to see this through, and like it's not right. So I always speak up on that.
So Lauren, I believe you wanted to speak before we left to break.
Oh yeah. I mean, I completely agree with what she said. I feel like if I saw a friend of mine being treated differently for any reason, I mean, I would speak up. And with Black people too, I mean, I feel like we have to protect each other because who else will? So we all should speak up and we all should say something.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Hey, Tammi, if we're now starting to say that all my I got dark skinned friends now, yeah, we got to have a conversation. That's normally what white people say. Most of my friends is Black. So now we starting to say, most of my friends is dark skinned. Yeah, we got a situation. We got to address it, because all my friends just Black.
How do we address it, G-Thing?
I guess the whole thing is that this whole thing been going back, and I mean, Spike Lee did a movie back then, and we still dealing
School
with
Days. Yeah, Spike Lee did School Days, and the big number was the good and bad hair, which was the jigaboos versus the wannabes.
Yeah.
The jigaboos were the dark-skinned women, and the wannabes were the light-skinned women, and it was extremely problematic. So this is not something that's new to America, nor to the Black community, and we do have to say it did not start with us. So let me ask a hypothetical question here. If slavery didn't exist, if there were no house slaves and field slaves, and we were just a Black community, would this dark skin, light skin thing between us still exist, Cordell?
That's a good question. So I would say yes and no. So I would say yes from the systematic racism point of view, where there is deep-rooted issues from that we're dealing with. But also, but if it didn't exist, then that portion of the racism part of colorism wouldn't be there, because there's a difference between a racist, like being racist colorism, and just being colorism because of just different skin tones. I think because every culture has like colorism within the culture. Every single culture that you can name has it within the culture. You talk to different people, they say they have it. So, and I don't think it's such a big deal, because if people like to have discussions like this, I think more so people be more aware, just like discussions of racism, have more discussions, people are more aware of it, but also people open their eyes and their minds to listen to both sides so that they can understand each other. Because I think sometimes we come into it just with one mindset, but if we listen to each other, then we kind of can get other different points of view and more understanding. With that understanding, we can like end it more and more, which I think we're getting there.
Yeah, and I think the best way to have that conversation is over a delicious, delectable meal. So can you please, what are some of the amazing recipes that we can find on deliciousexperience.com?
You can find my famous jerk chicken recipe. It is legendary. It's really, really good.
Not legendary though.
It's legendary. My collard greens, legendary, where my great aunt took the crown and gave me the crown for the family collard greens. And that's saying something, because, normally it stays with like, the older generation.
The crown now.
So, so yeah, there's all kinds of great recipes there. And then also my YouTube channel, Cordell the Culinary Diva, you'll see some of my different shoots from all over the world that I've done some cooking shows.
So Lauren, tell us about your latest single, Time Alone.
Oh, yes. Okay. So my single Time Alone is out. It's beautiful. It's just like a kind of like pop R&B song about how I love spending time alone, especially during the pandemic. And so, yeah, it's out. It's out there and everything. So please follow on Spotify, on all streaming platforms, and listen.
Neoma, tell us about NNE Unfiltered and how it came about.
I feel as if my platform kind of came about with me just speaking on my life experiences. I mean, I even did a YouTube video on, does light skin privilege exist? I also talk about growing up, adulting, this kind of weird space we're in, when it comes to our 20s, because we're not only living it in real life, but we're living it online. So I think if anyone wants a place to kind of just relate with a comedic touch, then my platform is the perfect place to catch up.
Yeah. And how do most people feel about the colorism conversations that you have?
Well, I had a lot of different responses. So a lot of people were agreeing with me. A lot of people refuse to believe it exists. And some people accuse me of bleaching and saying that, there are people who are even lighter than me. So I don't necessarily have the grounds to speak on this conversation. So it's YouTube.
That's interesting. Yeah. Like, I'm lighter than you, so you can't talk about it. Okay. There's colorism within the light skinned folk too. Who knew?
Right.
Dr. Webb, Colorism Healing. That's your thing. What is the mission?
So the mission is to raise awareness about what colorism is across the globe, but also to facilitate conversations like this so that people can heal and start to strategize solutions to it. And it's, really a global issue. And I think part of what I'm trying to do is allow people the space to tell their stories and to be seen and to feel validated and know that they're not alone. But then also, taking it to the policy level, taking it to schools, taking it to companies, taking it to businesses and saying, make sure y'all not being colorist now, okay? Because we have to address this just like we address racism and sexism and all the other isms in society.
Oh, Lord, I'm tired. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. But you talk about storytelling. In what ways does skin color impact the stories that we tell?
Mm-hmm. So I think our skin tone is, in some ways, the first thing that people see. It's one of the most noticeable and recognizable things people see about us, right? In addition to hair, right? And so I think a lot of times it's an inherent lens that we might have on the world. But like all of the panelists have said, we don't have to be limited to that lens. So I think again, Cordell, for example, saying listening to each other's stories. So I have to put a plug for my International Colorism Healing Writing Contest, which I think is a great way for that cross-cultural storytelling, because it's open to all people and it's free to enter. And I think the chorus of voices, all who have something to say about colorism despite their differences, I think those are the kinds of spaces that we need to continue to create.
Where can they go to register for that?
Colorismhealing.com.
There it is. G Thang, I know you have a plethora of projects off the heels of hosting the Millennial Tour, yeah.
Millennium Tour.
Millennium.
Yeah. They can
what
check
else
me
is
out
going on though?
I'm about to do Netflix is a Joke series here in LA coming up May 5th. I'm out on tour right now, getting ready for a Netflix special. And also they can see me on the new upcoming shows on Netflix with Wanda Sykes, Mike Epps, called The Upshaws.
I love it. I love it. I just shot a movie and Jermel Simon from The Upshaws was in the movie. So I love Upshaws. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not playing around.
For being on Business of Being Black. G Thang, Dr. Webb, Neoma, Salorm, and Cordell. Up next. Who's up next? Oh, let me tell you. Oh, Foxsoul Screening Room with Vivica Fox. Stick around for it. Until then, it's a blessing to be in your box. Bye, y'all.